Call to order the August 7, 2019 regular Warden Borough Council, or Warden Borough Council agenda meeting. We stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We welcome everyone to the roll call, please.
Mario Semina.
Here.
Michelle Miller. Here. Michelle Roberts.
Present.
Natalie Young is absent. Robert McGrath.
Here.
John Miller is absent. Charlie is absent. Mayor Abt.
Present.
Also present, Solicitor Ewald, Police Chief Espina, Sergeant Hotstein, and Jack Breslin from the Fire Department.
Thank you. And, the three absent council people have excused absences. Vacation this week. Public comment on agenda items. If anybody would like to comment on items that are on the agenda, approach the podium now. If you would like to comment on or bring up other business before council, we'll take that up during the open discussion period later in the meeting. Seeing no one at this time, go on to our agenda topics, and we start with public buildings and infrastructure. Mrs. Miller, please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Seems appropriate with all this rain talking about roads. So the only thing we really have tonight is that we did get bids in on our proposed paving project for this year. Three came in, one from Joseph Suker and Sons, second from Innovative Construction, and second from AF Dayton. The cheapest of those was AF Suker, which came in at $94,056. Innovative was $98,908, and Damon was at $112,836. We had anticipated if this whole project, there's a couple, okay, anyway, this whole project would come to $94,000 for this year. So with a bid of 94, that seems right. However, what we have available to us is only around $35,000. So
Yeah, just to let everybody know, I mean, it was a shame because the list that was put out was a preliminary list. It was supposed to be whittled down once we knew what our budget figure was. So after the approval was given last month to go out on bid, they actually put the documents out before I had a chance to talk to them. Before, that's the time period I was out sick for a couple of days. When I came back, they put the whole project out. So what we did is I went back to our Highway 8 fund, and remember, we have Providence Road that's already been committed. So we've got approximately $15,000 total on that, because it was 12 something for the program itself, plus we had signage and everything else, so we're approximating about 15,000. Plus we have then to get ourselves into the first quarter of next year before we get our next or Highway aid check coming in. So factoring all that in, we came up with about 45 to 50,000. You subtract out that 15, it brings it down. What we're saying is legitimately it should be like 30, 35,000. So if you look at the document in front of you, I just got this afternoon. So this document in front of you is with all the figures plugged in from the bid results for those that were on the preliminary list. But what Catania's done is they've ranked them now. So if you look in the first column, the rank, it goes from 1 to 5, 1 being the worst and 5 being the best. So the idea is they've ranked them according to what they feel needs to be done now as opposed to what can be done later. So that's what it is. Right now, we're looking probably at the first 3 roads, which would be Harding, Maple, and that one section of Newell. And
well,
then,
but the rating, you just said the rating 5 being the worst. Is that the
no,
the
one
worst?
is the worst, 5 is the
Okay,
best.
thank you.
Yes, yeah. So that's what it is. It would be those first 3, and I did have a calculation, but the first 3, and then the idea is you still have about 4,000 and some left over. My recommendation would be, if you go down, you see there is another section of Newell Street for about that amount, where that would bring you to about $30,000. So it would be those first 3 streets, and then the remainder of Newell, which would get that done all at one swipe, but that would bring you into that $30,000 range. But again, it's something to think about for next week, because that's what it is. I mean, we don't have to take any action on it. Like I said, it was a surprise when I found out that they actually put the bid documents out without us doing that first and whittling the list down, so.
Yeah, now, the one thing was, when we made the initial list, Newell wasn't on it, and we added that on at the end.
Correct.
So now, Catania is suggesting that Newell has moved up the list.
Correct.
So I just want council to understand that.
Yeah. Because they actually went out and looked at this within the last couple of days to check to make sure, so yes. yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So, so remember, we got around 35,000. See what everyone thinks with the recommendations that, of it being Harding, Maple, Newell, and Newell,
Well,
correct?
Yeah, it would be Harding, Maple, and then all of Newell would do that for us, would
Yeah.
get us into that time, or that figure, so, yeah.
So this was bid such that we can separate these projects out?
Well, that's the one question, in fact, that's what I asked today, and that's what we'll get to Carl tomorrow. All that the engineering office said was, it should be looked at by the solicitor once we decide what we want to do, the idea that we can do that, because you can whittle it down, but how much would be the question is, and that's what they just wanted to make sure that the solicitor was okay with it. As long as he is, yep, Catania had no problem with it, so.
And anybody who wants to see a copy of this, you're more than welcome to. Of course, Mrs. Preston would have one available at the office. That is all that I have for now, unless I'm going to bring up, we're going to discuss the,
Well, it's coming up on the agenda.
oh, there it is, never mind. That's all I have, thank you.
All right. So, and Mr. Poole,
Yes.
See it on
the sinking fund from the loan that we took several years ago for the roads, we've exhausted all that?
Yes, yes, that fund is actually closed out now. We closed that when we switched funds. I believe there was like $1,000 in it,
Okay.
so we just incorporated that into the general.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Highway 8 fund. Yes. Yeah. So, and just to remember, I mean, that was the one thing, we got lucky, 2 years ago, we had the money come in from Aqua, and we were able to do that large project with none of our funds. Then last year, what it did is it allowed us to combine 2 years' worth of liquid fuels money. So ours was about $100,000, the project last year. So that's why we anticipated about $50,000 this year, but again, that's what it went out to bid for all of the roads rather than for a section that would get us to $50,000. So.
All right. Any questions on that?
And if you do, just let me know during the week, because yeah, I'll definitely get an answer if you have any questions.
All right, thank you. Finance Administration, in Mr. Woodcraft's absence, Mr. Poole, are you prepared to discuss this item?
Yes, to make a very long story as short as possible, remember at last month's meeting, we had gotten 2 quotes on a bid for the police vehicle. One was from Republic, one was from Univest, who we actually have used on the last 2 police vehicles. I believe it was like 0.7, 0.8% difference between them, with Republic being the lesser as far as the rate went. Last month's meeting, we had recommended that council accept Republic's because it was a lower rate, but with the proviso that it be reviewed by the solicitor. Again, to make a very long story short, we've had problems again with Republic Bank when it comes to a loan. This happened several months ago when we went out with tax anticipation loan. They supposedly do not start working on the loan until after you've basically given your approval that you're going forward with it. So at that point, it's like pulling teeth to get information, and we were going back and forth for at least a 2-week period. And then they said, yes, the documents were coming, so we finally, I guess at the end of last week, when were you away? Last week.
Last week.
So middle of last week, we finally got the documents. I had Bob Scott review it in the absence of Carl. He was on vacation. There were 2 items. One was just a change of name. The other was adding a non-appropriations clause, which would not tie any council to appropriating money for a long period of time that another council later on would then have to fund for. We sent that information along to Republic with the idea that they were going to put that in the document, but then we had it returned to us saying we can't do that because of the way the loan's structured. So again, I went back, spoke with Bob Scott, sat down with both the Univest loan, which is a lease purchase loan, a tax-free lease purchase loan, and the loan that was being provided by Republic. And having both, at least at that point, with all the figures provided, I sat down, and the difference between the 2 over the 4 years was like, I think, $300 and some. So having looked at that, talked to Bob Scott about it, and again, it was nice because he finished my sentence. I said, my recommendation would be, right now, if we went with Republic, what we would have to do is have to get approval from DCED as far as being a long-term loan. So we have to get the attorneys involved, do filing with the state, so it would be not only additional time, but additional money. So the idea is, with that difference of just say $300, we would be spending that just to get the loan from Republic. So before I could even finish my sentence, Bob Scott said to me, I think you want to go with Univest. Is that what you're trying to say? Yes. He said, yeah, let me take a look at everything. He did. He talked with Carl, I believe, and they were both of the opinion that that would be the way to go right now. We have the documents from Univest ready to go. Once we, council would approve going with Univest, once we get the information tonight, we'd send it off tomorrow, and the car would hopefully be here next week, where with Republic, who knows? It may be weeks again before we get it. So the recommendation tonight would be, based on the fact that we could not work with Republic Bank in the way that they've structured their loan, would be to switch that to Univest Bank for a 4-year lease purchase loan for 4 years also. And that way, we could get that information off to them and be done with it. So.
And with the understanding that if you went with the Republic loan, even though that on its face it appears that it's slightly less, you'd be spending significantly more because of the amount of time that's required by borough staff and the solicitor's office to file the applications with the DCED. So this is actually the cheaper option.
Yeah, and that's what we don't have to do that because it is a lease purchase. We don't have to go through that. Like I said, this is the way that we've done it with the last 2 police cars with Univest. So we've got that experience with it.
So we're looking for a motion to, I guess, rescind the prior motion.
Correct.
And approve the loan offer from Univest on next week's agenda, correct?
Well, actually, for tonight, if we could. I mean, that's the idea, so that we could get the paperwork out.
Okay. All right, yeah, if that's in order.
That's fine.
Would anyone care to make that motion?
First, question wasn't it the rates were better?
Yeah, that's what it was.
Right.
It was like there was a.
But it's only a 4-year loan, and over the life of the loan, it was less than $400 in you know, when you calculated it out.
Right. Once we got the loan documents finally from Republic, I was able to compare basically apples to apples because I didn't have it before. I had a rate, but I didn't know what the actual payments were going to be. So comparing that with what we had already gotten from Univest, right? Like I said, the difference was like $300.
You end up paying me $1,000 or more to get all the documents approved by DCED, so.
Right. Plus, we still don't know what time period it would be because supposedly there is a quick turnaround with DCED, but sometimes that doesn't happen. So.
Why is DCD involved?
Because it would be structured as a long-term loan. And you would have to go and get approval because you'd be going beyond your budget season.
Yeah, see, that's the way they work. That's why that non-appropriation clause has been put into effect. The idea that you have that added so that you're not committing some kind of, long-term debt or something.
Can I quickly throw something in before anybody makes a motion?
Yes.
First of all, does it make any difference between this week and next week?
Yeah, the only thing is to get the car, because we waited since last month. It's been ready to go. We were waiting for the documentation to come to us. So again, yes, it's easier to get that out the door, and we should be able to have the car delivered then next week.
Okay, well, then I'm going to recommend that maybe we want to look at next week because we might not get the votes this week.
Well, we won't know until we vote on it, but, I mean, I guess usually we move it up because of exigent circumstances. I mean, no. Motion hasn't been made.
Well, how many votes do we need? Still the 4, right?
No, you need a majority of those
We
here.
have a quorum, so.
Well, the majority of the quorum.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well, never mind. Sorry, I thought it was of all 7.
So I'll make the motion to rescind the prior motion
Accept it.
to accept the bid from Republic to now to accept the bid with Univest in regards to the Dodge Durango.
Lease purchase of this.
Lease purchase.
2019.
So it's a lease purchase?
Correct.
I have a question. So with a lease purchase, so are we going to buy the lease out at the end of the?
Yeah, in fact, it's $1 which you never pay anything. I mean, you get the title without paying your $1. So that's the way it's structured, is you pay the $1 to get the car, but they don't even, it's just built in.
So, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
And that's what I said, that's the way the last 2 cars were structured. Police vehicles, same thing.
Is there a second for that motion?
second, I guess.
I mean, I'll second it if you want.
Go ahead.
All right, are there any questions on the motion as it's been made? Hearing none, can we have a roll call, please?
Okay, Mario Semino?
Yes.
Michelle Miller?
Yes.
Michelle Roberts?
Yes.
Bob McGrath?
No,
All right, motion carries. Anything else on finance administration?
That's all that I have for this week, yeah.
Okay. All right, public safety, before I call on the chiefs from the police and fire departments, do you have anything on public safety?
I don't have anything this week. Next week we'll have 4 officers being recognized for commendations. I discussed it with the mayor, and we'll put that on the agenda for next week.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have anything else at this time.
Okay. Mr. President?
I'll have a full report next week, but just want to get the word out. Our horseshoe tournament, we've changed the date. Normally we have it the 3rd Saturday of September. We've moved it to the last Saturday. I believe the date is the 28th. And we'll have all the full report for that next week also.
Okay. Thank you. All right, if there's, Mr. Poole, you don't have anything else on public safety?
No.
Mayor, do you have anything else?
Yes, I would just say, 2 weeks ago, we had a tremendous storm. Went down power line and 12 large trees, and I just wanted to thank the police department and our highway department and everyone who got out to make it safe for the community, put up detours and remove the trees from the highway so that everyone could get around Morton Borough safely. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone.
Yeah,
Good job.
thank you.
Concur with that. Thank you.
And I'd like to thank the mayor for coming out, directing traffic, helping us out.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, we'll go on to community and economic development. Mr. McGrath, please.
Okay, we have 2 things on our list here. First thing is we have the opportunity to take advantage of the Delco Greenway grant. I'm just going to go ahead and let Mr. Poole explain it. Do you mind?
Yeah, just to let you know, the county council has set aside money now for municipalities to expand their parks and recreations by several means. 4 specifically, but just to let you know, the one that we are looking at right now is what they consider conservation, which would be either protecting or purchasing additional parkland. So the program itself, it's on a very tight schedule because the application has to be in the beginning of next month. So that's why we're bringing this up tonight, because council will have to pass a resolution next week in order to make it available for inclusion in the application. So as I said, the way that we would approach the grant this year would be conservation, which would be anything that would be the expanding or acquisition of additional parkland. So that's why that's really what's on the radar right now. So,
Can you describe the proposed project?
well, that's what it is. I mean, I'm basically opening it up right now. I mean, I know there was some discussion amongst council about what they might want to do, and that's why it's basically at this point, whatever has been discussed. I wanted to make sure that all of council knew what was going on. So, because that's what we don't have anything specific other than right. I mean, we're ready to go with the actual application itself once council decides which way they want to go.
What I'm aware of, and I don't know if there's anything else out there, is that the Greenway grant is has a specific provision where if there's land that is under threat of development, that's land that the borough could apply for a grant in order to purchase, in order to preserve and conserve that land, and especially if it's located adjacent to existing parkland. And the reason I stepped in is that we're aware that there is some question as to whether the property back here owned by Councilperson McGrath might be under threat of development for subdivision, and because Mr. McGrath might stand to be in an economic transaction, he's not permitted to speak on council on it. But the one proposal would be to apply to county council for a grant that would allow us to add the rear portion of that property, which is under threat to be subdivided off for a house, instead to have it added to our park here that abuts the fire station and borough council's offices. So, I don't know what further, you're not looking for any vote tonight, right? So,
No, it just, due to the time schedule, we would have to pass the resolution though next week in order to make it in enough time to get the application at the beginning of September.
Are the other members of the Community Economic Development Committee familiar with the proposal?
This is a bit of a,
Mr. McGrath, you should.
Okay,
retire
well,
yourself
I'm
from-
sorry, I just wanted to
There's,
clarify something. I mean, and I just wanted to ask a question, and I won't go on. Never mind, I'll ask my, go on.
I thought that as we had, there had been some discussion the last couple of weeks about this project, that that there's another possibility along Sycamore, is on the opposite side of the street from Mr. McGrath's property and down the block. Is that off the, that could be part of the,
No, but that's what I'm saying is, it's only been a brief discussion, and that's what there was going to be supposedly discussion amongst council about that. That's why, we're just waiting to see what council wants to do.
well, there.
I'm not,
Yes.
I'm not aware of the property that you're referring to.
Well,
Is there a
then
vacant
I
lot?
will, bring it up, if I may. Michael Santiago, who's here, lives at the, owns the property at the corner of Sycamore and Morton Avenue that is a old Victorian apartment house. Part of his property, to my understanding, as he faces Morton Avenue and then he comes along Sycamore, his property actually crosses the creek, and therefore he can't build upon it. So if there was a possibility that through this grant, we could buy a portion of his property on both sides of the creek and make that a picnic-y sort of area, something that would be adjacent to what we're doing at Sycamore Woods. It would help us both out, that we would have a little bit more green space, and he has some property that he can't use.
Isn't there a question of whether that would make that lot non-conforming?
I have no idea. You know more about that than I do. But it's two, Michael,
This is the
it's two
first I've
parcels?
been
Yeah, I mean, this
clued in,
is,
so I don't really know anything about that.
Well, it's two parcels of land.
Is it non-conforming? Are you asking in terms of the size of the lot?
it's a separate parcel from the one with the house on it?
It's a contiguous parcel, but it's very, very long, and the back more or less half of it.
Can you just tell me what the address is?
601 North Morton.
I can take a look and see, but I can't do it, on the fly.
Well, it was just an idea, because of course, as we all know, there's very little open land in Morton. Anything that could be used, and again, it would be a situation that would be helpful not only for the resident, but would give us a nice little pocket park.
Well, we're not in the business of being concerned with helping out an individual
Well,
resident.
that's
No
not the only,
offense.
I understand, but that's not the only thing that I'm referring to. I'm just saying
Right.
that it would be, that there's two different things here that would be an advantage. That instead of this empty space that can't be used for anything, that it could be used for the public.
And
Instead
because
of being
601
private
North
property.
Morton Avenue is the address of the apartment building on the property, correct? But you're saying there's two separate lots on
No.
it? No.
It's a single lot, but it extends, there's a backyard that has grass, then it becomes woods, and there's the creek, and then there's probably about, 30 feet of frontage on the other side of the creek. That's all wooded before you hit the next property. And that's all a single lot.
Okay. My question would be, is is the lot large enough to subdivide it without making the residential lot non-conforming?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
I mean, these are a couple, complications that we'd have to figure out before we could even consider that project.
I have a question.
Mayor Adams?
Yes, is there a cost to the borough with this grant project?
Yeah, there's a 10% match.
At least at 10%, that's all there is.
10%.
At least 10%. And that being that if you can throw in 25%, they'd be glad to take it, but it must be at least 10%.
But we would have to amend the budget to reallocate those funds.
Not necessarily. I mean, depending on what the time schedule is, because it probably wouldn't be until next year anyway.
Okay. But we can apply without,
Oh, yeah, I mean, because, legitimately,
Money
you're going to be
allocated.
applying without having, like, if you have to subdivide, if you have to do this, you're just giving them a project and basically saying, this is what we would like to do, I mean, I would assume there would have to be an agreement of sale already and that type of thing, but you really wouldn't have gone through any of that yet, as far as the sale, subdivision, whatever like that. So, it's going to be a process, just because of the time schedule involved.
My other question would be, is that land usable as a park since it's so close to the creek? Is that someplace that we can?
Well, that's the reason sort of that we wanted, that the creek would be there. We, like you think of the library, that the park, up in Springfield Road, the creek runs through the park. Often there is such a thing, that happens.
Yeah.
That'd be one nice little water feature.
I think that's something we'd have to
So-
research.
I think, is there like a square footage or dimensions that you're proposing?
We haven't measured it off or anything, so we're just bringing it up tonight, something that probably Mr. Catania could tell us a little bit more about too. And then, of course, I mean, whatever the requirements are for the size of the house and the square footage that has to be on the lot, we don't know, what all that is, why we're bringing this up with them. Just sort of a cool idea to have a little pocket park.
When you say it's an apartment building, how many units is it? Is it converted single family or was it?
Yes,
Okay.
it was, the zoning is a single-family dwelling, but it was grandfathered in because of the time it was converted to 3 units.
And is that R2 there?
I believe it is.
Your property is, or the Sycamore is R2? Well,
I think
I'll
I'm
look at
an
it.
R1, but I'm across the street.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the other part of it was we'd have to be prepared for the upkeep of it, and that would include, any stormwater management issues with that section of the creek there. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but we'd have to be, that's another consideration.
Well, the creek must be managed no matter what.
Right.
I mean, whether we officially take it over, but we would be, I guess what you're saying is that actually right now, Mr. Santiago is in charge of that.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, and so is there another project on the table?
Well, the other one was what Carl talked about, was.
Okay, we really didn't fully describe that. That would be,
So the question would be the rear 1,000, square feet of that property, because I think it's 2,000 square feet total, would be subdivided off and added to the park here. It would also, start to connect the Sycamore Woods more to the Borough Hall property. And I guess this is something you'll have to discuss next week. Whether you want to apply for the grant at all and what projects you might want to include in that. So that you can get directions to borough staff on what they're, what you're going to do.
right. All right, well, I guess we're going to need answers to the questions on 601 North Morton property from the Mr. Field prior to next week's meeting. particularly since we have 3 absent council members that the projects under the table. Mr. Poole, if you can just, briefly describe the projects in an email to the council. BCC everybody, so we're not inadvertently deliberating. But, so the other 3 council members are understanding what's being proposed here. Can ask any other questions prior to the meeting, so hopefully we might be able to get the answers before the end of the meeting.
Hopefully, right.
I don't know that there's any. Mrs. Miller?
The only other thing, the property up on Morton Avenue that is being converted, the first 100 block with the little so-called park there, did we sell that piece of land along with the buildings? Or is that little,
Can you say this again?
the check cashing place and then the apartments that are being
It's not
converted?
the 100 block, it's the 10 block.
Yeah, that was sold.
Yes, that was
2 years
sold.
ago.
Yeah. So is the little, we still cut the grass there, maintain that?
We have nothing
No,
to
okay,
sell.
that's, okay. I just was making sure that wasn't ours.
All right, so we really can't go further with this until we get more information on the projects, correct?
Right.
Yeah, well, these were just ideas that came up that, since this grant is coming up so quickly. that it-
Yeah, I mean, that's the unfortunate thing,
Yeah.
but,
And it was
consider it
the
next
only, it was
week.
the only open land that we could think of, offhand to try to take advantage of it. And out of curiosity to see if, what can and can't be done.
all right, well, I guess we have to leave that item there and look for more.
Yeah, which is basically what we're going to have to do anyway for the resolution next week, just to have it, discussed next week after everybody's had a chance to ask the questions or find out more about it, so.
Okay. All right, thank you. There's another item under community and economic development.
Yes, and it is the DRPC Safe Routes and Transit Morton Steering Committee. I got an email on this, and it looked very interesting. I've spoken to Mr. Poole about it ahead of time, but we didn't get a chance to do that, so I'm going to, don't go away, Mr. Poole, we're going to ask you to describe this one too.
Not going anywhere. If you remember, last year, we had put in for a Safe Routes to Transportation grant with DVRPC, with Rutledge. We partnered with them to find safer routes to get not only Rutledge, but Morton residents or visitors through the area of Morton Avenue, across into the parking lot, obviously to get to the train station. Through the efforts of county planning, Delaware County Planning, they kind of pushed it a little bit further and asked that DVRPC look to put this on what is called DVRPC Planning Work Program, which basically means that they put these kind of projects on a fast track and get them funded as quickly as possible and get them out the door. We, with the help of County Planning, had just sent a brief narrative to DVRPC stating what we wanted to do. It was one of those things where we were told, it looks like you're going to get the funding. The grant year started July 1st. We still hadn't heard anything, and it wasn't until about 2 weeks ago, I finally heard from Tom Schaefer, who is the transportation person out at Delaware County Planning, that we have been funded for this, and that what they're looking for right now is basically for us just to come up with a steering committee. What members of the steering committee? If you see in front of you, I put a copy of what was basically our narrative that was sent in as part of what we were looking for. And as you can see, really what it is, it's taking what was done with the Morton Connects and taking that a step further and getting it basically project ready, where you would have those things in place that you wanted to get done, and you would be able to go out at the end of this, which we're looking at right now, to hopefully get some of these projects done. Just to give you some background, the project was funded for a total of $150,000, which we are responsible for a 20% match, which we will share that with Rutledge, hopefully on that same 3/4, 1/4 that we do, So pretty quickly, that would be $22,500 for us and $7,500 for Rutledge as far as this goes. That again would probably not be until sometime after the beginning of next year that we would actually have to be putting any money in, so that would be part of the budget for next year. But it's one of those things, again, it was basically fast-tracked. As you can see, the last sentence that's on this description, which was added by DVRPC, it says, "This project will be led by the Office of Transportation Safety with support from DVRPC's Office of Transit, Bicycle, and Pedestrian Planning." That is absolutely correct. We really have not done anything with it yet. We've only been asked to come up with members of the steering committee. The first meeting will hopefully take place in September. We would have, what I would recommend is basically using the same model that we used for the Morton Connect study, which was the Community Development Committee. The chief was involved, we had our engineer involved, borough secretary, myself. So we just had those involved. I think one resident we had used to start the process. Rutledge will do the same just by having probably somebody from the government and a resident involved. And then the rest is being taken over by DVRPC. It will be SEPTA, PennDOT, all that. So yeah, hopefully we'll have a very good turnout when we get that first meeting. So I brought it to Mr. McGrath's attention only because right now what we've got to do is just kind of get back to them and say, yes, we want to have these people named to that committee. And like I said, my recommendation is really to do what we did with the Morton Connect study, because that seemed to work pretty well.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be too big if we have members from Rutledge and Morton and have the same number of people.
No, Rutledge is going to have two. They'll have probably one from the government side, and then I believe, and that might be the head of planning, and then it would be somebody probably as a resident. So it would only be two members from them.
And how many are we supposed to have?
Well, we can have as many as we want, and like I said, I think we should have it what we did before, which was, I think that was a composition. It was just a community development. Yeah, they were added on at the end. I mean, they were going, which would happen in this too. When we get started, it would be community development, so there would be 3 members. Mrs. Preston, myself, the chief, and at that point, like I said, we had 1 resident that was involved also. So,
This is my appointment.
Does it, I don't know, what is the grant, does the grant say anything about who or how they are?
no, nope. Doesn't have, I mean, that's what it is. It was left to us just to do, you know.
So we put a committee together, tell them we've got a committee.
Well, basically, we have members, here's the members that we would like to sit on that subcommittee. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have been speaking recently about the intersection of Morton Avenue and Mitchell, and putting up stop signs there,
Yeah.
and been talking to PennDOT about that.
Yep.
And that would be incorporated in this?
It would be talked about because the idea is that is on PennDOT's agenda right now. So the idea is with
Well, I
them
don't know
being.
if the stop signs are. Were the stop signs at that intersection part of the?
But those are the types of things.
Yeah, that's
okay,
what was
okay.
suggested. Yeah, I mean, they were
Yeah.
looking at crosswalks, stop
Yeah,
signs,
okay.
everything else,
Right.
right, where PennDOT is, yeah.
The
It's
steering
just-
committee
Yeah.
would
Okay. This isn't just based on what
include
Morton
that
Connects.
as an option and what to do.
Yeah.
So the next step, it's the next step from the analysis that we paid for
Correct.
already.
That's really
And
what it
now
was. That
we're
was your
going to
first step.
start-
This would be the next step,
Right.
which hopefully to get you ready to do some of those things that we
Right,
talked
now
about.
we actually start putting it in stone, no pun intended, what we
Yeah.
actually want to do with those recommendations.
Correct.
Okay, so we'll, the committee will start working in that direction.
Yeah, and that's why I brought it up.
We'll need
It's
to
more-
do, we'll need to do a motion next week to appoint the committee, which will include, I agree, should include the 3 members of the Community Development Committee, and then if that committee wants to recommend a resident to be appointed, we should have that name by next week, so we have a motion. And we'll put that on the agenda, Mrs. Preston, to appoint the Safe Routes to Transit Committee members for next week.
And we've also been talking with SEPTA about their responsibilities, helping to paint lines across Yale Avenue from the train station to the municipal lot. And, which they haven't done, and I see people crossing there at the train, having to wait because people don't stop for them.
SEPTA is not doing a lot of things.
So they will be part of this study, they will be
Correct.
part of all this, and
Yeah.
we can.
And in fact, that's how we
get
got a
their
lot of those
faces
things
about
done
it.
the last time, is because we had a sitting member on the committee, which we were able to at least pass that information along. And if not get in contact, they would find out for us.
So will Delaware County Planning or DVRPC reach out to SEPTA?
DVRPC is supposedly doing, right, all of that other legwork. They
So
were
we
just
don't need
asking
to-
us, kind of as one of those entities, to do our part, but they'll reach out to everybody else, so.
Yeah, my recollection of that issue with SEPTA was curb cut that needs to be put in.
Yep.
Put that curb cut. We were looking at the lines. We did paint the lines.
But that's what it was with the curb cuts, that's correct. And then that was also part of what we were talking about with this, with the safe routes, and like I said, now this has been picked up, so all of that's included with what we're talking about.
All right, and do we need a motion to accept the grant?
No, I mean, that's the way that it worked. If you remember, we, I think, just gave, I don't want to say tacit approval. I brought it to your attention, it was the idea, we were just going to approach, with the safe routes combining with Rutledge, which we did. And then, like I said, county planning took it from there and just went with it, and we've kind of just been in the background at this point.
So we're not the grantee then?
Well, we are. I mean, we'll eventually get some kind of paperwork, but the idea is that's, I guess, in the works right now, but they're asking us for the committee members right now so that the process can continue on.
So we will have to approve the grant at some point.
At some point, but we don't have to do that now, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Anything else on that item? Anything else on community and economic development?
Yeah. Wait, I was waiting for you to finish asking the question. Okay, not at this point, thank you.
Okay. Public health, sanitation, and recycling. This is Robert's, please.
Yes, good evening. On the agenda tonight, we'll discuss the extension of the recycling contract, and I am going to refer to Mr. Poole. I know that we have a decision to make in regards to extending it.
It would be actually both for the trash and recycling. If you remember, we had put out for a 3-year contract, which is set to end the end of this year, but there's a provision in there for an optional 4th year, and I had Mr. Ewald take a look at the agreement just to make sure that I was correct, that we would only have to notify them prior to 30 days to the expiration of the agreement that we wanted to take that 4th year option. So that would be both for the trash and the recycling side. And of course, my recommendation is with the way that everything is, not only with the recycling, but also with the trash, that if you went out and rebid at this point, not only would you be spending a lot of money to do that, but you would also get figures that would be, especially on the recycling side, very different from what you have right now, at least for this 4th year. So.
All right, so are we looking to have a vote on that next?
Well, that's what it is. I mean, if Mrs. Roberts wanted to do that, that's really what it was. It was the idea that the recycling committee, especially, but also, it's charges sanitation also. So it would be, both of those contracts would be extended for that option.
Okay, you said it's only prior to 30 days to the expiration
At
date.
least 30 days prior to the expiration date.
So we don't have to do it.
Right, we don't
No,
have.
but it's
to
just
do it this week.
to get it in the pipeline so that we can do it, just to make sure that everybody's aware and that there's not any kind of,
Okay, so I would just, at least I would like to put it before my committee, and then we can come back and bring it back.
that was my question to you,
Okay.
whether you wanted to take it back to them first, right? Okay.
All right, thank you for that input, and as everyone is aware, I have seen the red containers at several of the residents' homes, and they are available for the residents. You just have to come to the borough and provide a source of information that you are the homeowner, and you will be entitled to your container. Also would like to thank Officer, I believe his name is Jeremy Thomas.
Jeremy Michaels?
Yes, Jeremy Michaels. He assisted me on Saturday. I was able to give out 37 containers, and he seen me up here as I was waiting for residents to come, and he asked if he could assist me. So him and I went and gathered some containers, and we made 2 visits. And we began on Walnut Street, and he also began to knock on doors and introduce himself. So I went to Chief and Sergeant, and I do appreciate him committing his time and service to help me out. And so basically,
You want to tell them that?
yes, there is a limited quantity, and your first come, first served, because they are actually to be rolled out on our community day, which is October the 12th. So, I mean, I was just pushing to try to get the containers up, so they're just not taking up space here in the borough. But they will be rolled out on October the 12th on the community day. And I do know that there are still projections of what the committee has to do. So I will be meeting with Mr. McGrath and Mr. Miller in regards to finalizing a formal letter that'll come out to the residents, making them aware of the right things to recycle. Okay? So all that is in the works. If there's any other questions for me?
I got one comment.
Yes.
I heard today on the news that if you have one vegetarian meal a week, you save the greenhouse gases of driving like 600 miles. So that you're eating vegetarian rather than eating red meat, that is better for the environment. It was an incredible number, and actually I think maybe they said 1,200 miles, which seemed extraordinary, but you know, I don't know if it's fake news or not, but I thought it was really interesting.
Even though most of those vegetables came from California?
I
How
don't
about
know.
that?
Well, they're not growing in my backyard this summer.
Yeah. Or, better than that, skip a meal.
But there you go.
And in regards to recycling, I have heard some issues. I mean, a lot of people don't, it's not mandatory that we recycle. We're just encouraging people to recycle because it is a part of things that are happening with our environment. If not for me, but for the future of your children, that's what is important about recycling. And I know that there's a lot of people that say that it's not worth the effort. But once again, it's about trying to do something to help the environment for those in the future. So with that said, that ends my report, unless there's something else for me.
All right, thank you. Law and ordinance, I'll refer to Solicitor Ewald.
You have two ordinances that are advertised for next week to be considered for adoption. The first one is an ordinance amending the code to prohibit parking in certain areas. It would be here at the corner with Providence, extending 40 feet towards Borough Hall. Down here on the corner, it's 130 feet down towards Alpha Terrace from the stop, from the corner, and also on Taylor, and that's only 15 feet.
Actually, it's
Bridge from Taylor.
Bridge from Taylor.
So it's, you know, that basically preventing people from parking on that curved corner at that intersection. And then the second ordinance is an ordinance that's designed to regulate the use of dumpsters, like those giant dumpsters they use when someone's renovating a house, or portable storage containers, meaning those you know, boxes that go out on the driveway people are using instead of moving trucks. The ordinance sets forth the rules and regulations for when those can be used and as a permitting process to make sure that those rules are followed. Both of those have been advertised and they're ready for you to approve next week if you so desire. That's it.
All right, are there any questions on those ordinances from members of council at this point? Hearing none, we'll put those motions to approve those ordinances on the agenda for next week, please. Okay. Mr. Poole, anything on law and ordinance?
I don't have anything now.
I'm sorry, I have one other thing. In consultation with the chief, there's, the police department is requesting the ability to charge a fee for the process it takes police officers to review documentation to authorize the release of a vehicle after it has been towed due to an arrest. So if someone's driving a vehicle and subsequently is arrested and then that car is towed to an impound lot, the police officers have to spend time making sure that the registration, insurance, and inspections all current and verifying that the person who is picking up has legal authority to pick it up. And so the police department's asking for an ordinance that would allow for them to charge a fee to reimburse the department for the time that the officer spends approving that release. So we'll be drafting that, and that should come out in the next, that should be available for your review next week, and then possibly be approved in September.
All right, if you could just update Mrs. Young when she gets back.
Will do.
All right, if there's nothing else on law and ordinance, on to Parks and Recreation, Mr. Mayor.
The only thing I have tonight, We have our Morton Borough Night at the Phillies coming up on Monday, August the 26th at 7:05. We have tickets available, and they're available to be picked up here at Borough Hall. And also, I have tickets available, and Rodina Lloyd has tickets available also. So we had a total of 50 tickets. We've sold about 30 so far. So we have about 20 tickets left. So I do have some available with me tonight. If anyone is interested in purchasing tickets, I have them tonight. So the game is against the Pittsburgh Pirates. So it's a state rival match. So, oh yes, and the tickets are $10 a piece. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any planning or zoning applications? No. Any old business from members of council? New business from members of council?
Can I say one thing? 'Cause
Yes.
I forgot to do your report. I sent an email today in reference to the Providence Road
Oh, yes,
traffic
I forgot
calming
to
project.
bring that
Yes, no,
up.
because I didn't bring the file, and that's what
Yeah.
it just dawned on me. We had word today from our engineer that, I don't know whether this is gonna happen or not. Maybe Friday that can be done, if we can, I have papers to get signed, but then PennDOT would have to approve, and then if not Friday, it would be the 22nd of this month, so it would be, I
They
think
would
that's a
install?
Thursday. So yes, yes, but they have a break at the end of this week, so if we can get that done, they can probably come in on Friday to do that, but I don't know whether we've got enough time to get what we need to get done first, but otherwise it would be on the 22nd, which I think is.
Oh, I thought your email said the 19th.
Is it the 19th? Okay, because I don't have it with me, I just said, so yeah, whatever it is that week, right, okay.
I'm
Yep.
glad you're either way, it's moving forward.
Yes.
Yes.
I have one new business item, and I'm seeing we have a couple of residents from Bridge Street here. I'm guessing that you're going to bring this up anyway. We're going to have a discussion, so I'll bring it up now. But, so we had put temporary signage regarding resident parking on Bridge Street, and I wasn't aware that that ordinance was still in effect. Or are we doing this in anticipation of a future?
So I made it more of a temporary police order, no parking, residents only, because we were having a problem with residents were putting items out, cones especially, paint cans, items in the street saving parking spots. I was told they were having issues with the commuter parking. People were parking, they're leaving for work during the day, and they come back and they can't find no parking because people park there all day. So I spoke to the residents, and to relieve some of their problems till we were able to pass an ordinance, I posted the signs there to help them out until we could actually come up with something.
But I thought the last time we went through this on Walnut Street, the reason that we passed I forget whether it was an ordinance or a resolution, but it basically put in place time-limited parking because we determined that
And you're correct.
a prohibition on resident versus non-resident parking was unenforceable.
So, like I said, those signs are temporarily there just as a police order. But that's what I'm going to ask council to do, if they could at some point amend that ordinance. No parking 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., what's on Walnut Street, just to add Bridge Street to that. And that would relieve the residents of that burden of not having any place to park. There's no driveways there, they have no driveways. It seemed to work, what I've done so far. I don't know if the residents could speak to that, about that, but it seems to be working.
Well, I was putting,
Hang on one second. I just want Mr. Ewald, if you can review that ordinance, I believe the way we did that ordinance was that we may be able to amend it by resolution, and my recollection is that council had agreed that that would be considered for any block where we got a certain percentage of petition among a certain percentage of residents of that block wanting that time limitation on parking. So we need to determine what the ordinance actually says. And then if that's the case, then we would be looking for the residents to present such a petition. But with that said, I'll open it up for
well, this has been going on since like last November. And like 2 weeks ago, before the signs were put up, I was putting money in the meters where the people from the train should have been putting money in the meters. it's not fair. I have no place to park. I'm unloading paint, and I can't walk a quarter mile doing this stuff. Something's got to be done. It's not a new issue.
Yeah, and we can,
This has been going on a long time with the parking permit, and I appreciate everything that you took.
Can you identify yourself? I'm
oh,
sorry.
yes, your name and address.
I'm Sandra Wadsworth, and I live on Bridge Street.
And just the gentleman that's
I'm
going.
Don Bullis. I live on Bridge Street.
Yes. And it's always been a problem with parking there. It used to be permit only all the time on that section, or, you know, but it's intensified with the trained people. And I've even seen them last night when I got home at 6 o'clock. They go to the parking lot behind apartments, now that you put that there. So they go on Church Road, they go there. So early in the morning, and the chief had saw it for himself, it's trained people, you know? But when the trained people aren't there, then we have like the apartment people and their guests, and there's nowhere on those 7 houses to park. I don't have a driveway, you're not allowed to park across the street, you know, in their lot, and it's a hardship. And I actually started the cone thing, which worked good for a couple of years, because I was taking care of my 91-year-old mother, and on weekends and at night I'd have to get her in and out, and couldn't, and the same thing. I'm in the cleaning business, self-employed, I load, I unload, and would have nowhere to park.
I'm the guy with the paint cans.
And so, what the chief has recommended, as far as I still understand, is the permit only from 7 to 10 PM or AM? AM. And then Monday through Friday. But that eliminates the trained people, and but it won't eliminate the apartment people and their guests. And on snow or rain. So, and I have samples from Swarthmore that on the same block, on the same street of Cornell Avenue, they have 2 different things. They have permit only, and I have pictures if you guys would like to look at. Permit only all the time for 7 houses. On the next block, it's from 7 to 5 AM, because there's different situations on the same street, you know? And it's legal because they do it there, and I have, you know, proof of ordinance. We could get petitions, we went through that before, we could get evidence. My sister saw it on Facebook where somebody had said, oh, you can park in Mort, not worry about ticketing. And I do sympathize with the chief, because I do think it'll push it up further, because it's just like free parking in Morton, basically. But it's still an issue that needs to be resolved. And I couldn't believe, I saw at least 3 people coming from the apartments now that they can't, or from the train, get in the cars at the apartments. We don't just have one apartment building, we have the 2 that face Morton Avenue there. And you're on the same street, it's gonna push them up the street,
It will.
yeah,
That's why
so,
I'm recommending the whole street and Beach Street.
Yeah.
On the other end of Bridge Street, they have residential parking.
yeah. Well, that was because of this problem before, and we used to have permit only all, what I'm
Somebody
asking
took
for.
the sign.
I know.
Because I believe that ordinance was rescinded, because I believe we determined it was unenforceable. So-
Which ordinance is that?
I'm sorry.
I may predate mine.
I could give you copies of ordinance that, similar problems in similar towns that have done it. I work all over the place in media, and I have where, I think it was problematic because people would have guests, and then the guests would not, you
Right, yeah,
know,
that
put
was
in
another
guest
issue.
pass.
It
and
gets
it-
messy.
that they're-
It gets very messy.
Yeah, it gets
But
messy.
it's really messy when you come home at work and have nowhere to park. But they've solved it by having guest pass. In fact, I was able to find it on the website, the ordinance from Morton, and you do have a provision in there for guests
That's
that
the
you pay.
one that was done for Walnut Street, I believe.
Yeah,
Um,
but I feel like for our situation, that as much as I appreciate everything you're doing, the 7 to 10 would not work, because it's worked really good now at nighttime and on weekends, because it says police temporary, resident only. When the lights went out and I'm directly across the door from the apartments, I heard a guy out there saying, well, how come we can't park there, you know, it's a street. And they said, well, it's only temporary. They don't consider themselves residents. We've not had one apartment person park there since you put those signs up. So I'm
That's why
really thrilled to death.
They're still residents, so.
Yeah, but
Right,
they,
can't park there.
Yeah, there was a reason why we did it in such a way that we did it for Walnut Street. And that's what we've got to go back and figure out why we did it that way, and whether we have to do it the same way this time, or whether there's a different solution for this issue.
could I show you these signs? They have a different situation than us. They do not have apartments, they do not have the gyms. This is
But
on the exact
the
same
issue
street
was,
in Cornell with 2 different signs. They actually had like 3 signs because they have not at night. So, I mean, there are towns, here's a copy of their ordinances. You know, not that we're not Swarthmore, but people have, you know, solved it in different ways. It's solvable. And it must be legal because I work in media, I work in Swarthmore, and I've had to put guest pass up.
well, that's what we need. We need the answer on. So
Thank you.
Mr. Ewell, if you can research that and the reason.
I know it stops at commuter parking on Walnut Street, it's very effective.
Mhm.
And I'm sure we'll work on Bridge Street and the temporary signs have.
Yes.
As far as eliminating other times, I don't know what the answer is to that, but unless we do
Right.
something as far as residential only parking, I don't know if legally we could do that.
Yeah.
I'd like to say that, looking at the ordinances here in the book, there's things that, of course, the solicitor has to look at, but there is a number of things here for several streets. Bridge is not one of them. Have limited parking between, or people are not allowed to park there, or limited parking, I should say, between 9 and 3 p.m., 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then there was a lot of details. I don't see anything in here about the residents, there having to be a plurality of residents.
Well, maybe that.
But nonetheless, the commuters, bless their hearts, have to all go to work, but they don't live here. And the residents, I mean, that's their problem.
I absolutely sympathize
yeah.
with what the problem
And-
is. I want to make sure we do it in a way that's enforceable.
And the problem with this one being summertime will only get worse here in the next few weeks as the kids go back to, as people are back on vacation and the kids go back to college. So as long as those signs, till we can figure something out to the chief, I'd like to hope that he can keep those signs up for the residents. Because, well, however long it is, but it's just that here by the beginning of next month, these poor people on Bridge Street are gonna continue to have this problem, and it'll be worse. And anyone else who's affected by it that lives in that area. So hopefully we can figure something out.
All right, well,
Or soon.
let's put discussion of this under law and ordinance for next week's meeting, and Mr. Ewald will report back to us on what he finds with the current ordinance and whether this situation is.
Do you want me to get petitions and proof or I've
Well, it's
gotten
not-
some information. What do you want me to do on my part?
Hold off a week.
Yeah, hold off a week until we
We can't
determine
answer
what the
questions like
ordinance
this
is.
on, like, just on the drop of a dime.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes,
Hi, my name's Chanel Bradley. I live on Harding Avenue. It's kind of a similar situation. There's a couple different things that's going on where I live at. One, there's a handicap placard for a house that is, to my understanding, vacant. And then also, like, there's a house right next door to me that has been under maintenance for, it seems like forever, where there's 3 or 4 sometimes trucks parked there to work in the house. When I come home from work with my 3 children, there's nowhere for me to park. I have had 3 flat tires. I have found 3 nails in my car, like in my tires, from parking there because of these work trucks. At one point in time, I think there was a dumpster. Like, if you Google my address, you can see the dumpster in the picture. The truck was out there for about 2 or 3 weeks, it seems like. So I just don't know, like, what is going on with this house. These people are in there working till 11:30, banging hammers at night, and the house is so close. I have a single family
What's
house.
the address of the house, ma'am?
I think it's 33 Harding Avenue. I'm at 35, so it's right next door.
37.
37 Harding, yeah. So it's just become a nuisance. So that's an issue with parking there and the nails in the tire and just being disturbed past my children's bedtime, especially after coming home from
Well,
work.
if there is work going on after hours, you can call 911.
I have a couple times.
After 7, the
After 7 o'clock,
noise
yeah.
ordinance is 7 o'clock.
Police
Yeah.
will respond.
Yeah, they still do it. I have called out
Okay.
and
Well,
had
please
officers
continue to
come.
call when it happens, because they
Vehicles.
will get fined for it.
She spoke of that we ended up towing that vehicle. It was a police matter, and we towed the vehicle, the dump truck that you spoke
Okay.
of.
Yeah, I haven't seen that, but I just mentioned that.
That shouldn't be ever come back.
Okay.
And I believe the handicap placard sign is for a house across the street, but I'm not sure. I'd have to look into it.
Yeah,
There's
they're
only
not
parking
there.
on one side of the street.
Yeah, 'cause they actually had the car towed, and they salvaged that vehicle. So the woman is no longer in the house, and so I'm essentially pulling in that spot to take my groceries in, to get my children in the house, because these people that are working on this house are 3 or 4 cars parked in front of my house. So, and then also there's a house right on the corner of Harding and Maple that, I don't know if they do some type of therapy services, they do something in there, but they have clients come in and out of that house, and they also park in front of my house as well. So that's also an issue with the parking, and I mean, I don't know if I can just go straight to another topic, but around rush hour, I have kids, there's a lot of kids in there. People, they don't even stop at the stop sign sometimes. It's dangerous. Like one day, God forbid, somebody is really going to get hurt because they're cutting through, you know, to avoid the traffic on 420 and Morton Avenue. And I mean, I know everyone has probably experienced it,
Yeah,
but
it's, I mean, the entire town is a crossroads, and I know the police department tries to move around the enforcement as, you know, efficiently as they can, and does regular enforcement. You know, as far as, you know, beyond that, you're talking about on Harding?
yes, I have
it's all-
seen signs where they have, like, you know, on certain other streets, but they don't have those signs on my end. And I have 3 little ones that, you know, ride up to the park, you know. It's just, I don't even let
mean,
them
watch
out past a
children's
certain
signs.
time. Yeah, like we don't have the, I mean, I could go purchase them myself, but I just didn't know, you know, I didn't know if I'm allowed to just put it out there, because I had mentioned it before, but I didn't know I had to come here, so.
You say that there's no watch children's signs or children at play signs there around Harding and Maple?
Right,
Specifically?
yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, well, let's check all those cut-through streets. I think that would include Pennington as well.
Yep.
They do have signs on
They
them?
do, okay.
Not on the 31 block, the block where the Morton Club is, because that's where my mother lived at, and my children go over there and play in front of her house as well. So I don't see any signs on that block.
All right, well, let's see if we need to add them to that block as well. And we can order those signs. That doesn't take long minutes to put them on. So, as far as the parking, you know, we'll make sure that, you know, to the extent that we can enforce, you know, the hours of the construction work, and I guess you'll verify that that handicap parking is still active.
That's correct.
Chief? Okay. But that's about all we can do with the parking.
Good, I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, so I think we have the plan on the Bridge Street issue. We'll bring that up again next week. And, is there any other open discussion? Well, actually, I didn't call it open discussion yet, so I'll call open discussion. Mr. Lee, please.
Good evening, Michael Lee, 123 West Sullivan Avenue in Morton. I did have a question for Mr. Lillicrap, but since he's not here, maybe one of you members could answer this question for me. If you're reading the papers, Aqua is trying to purchase Delcora and also the Chester Water Authority. Is there anything that the Storm Water Collaborative can do to either stop it or delay it, so an investigation can be done to see what's going on?
The Stormwater Collaborative wouldn't have anything to do with that, and they don't have any authority to, legal authority over anything like that. But they're stormwater, the Delcor is a sanitary authority. As far as the municipalities having any legal say in that, I don't think that's the case for that.
I mean, you can always let your, let your voice be heard by your representatives, but in the end, we're not in Cheshire Water Authority.
No.
That's got its own executive board, and I would attend the Delcor meetings and voice your opinion.
Okay.
Well, I would, actually, it's not a bad idea that I think council might consider a resolution, I don't know exactly what we want to say, but, that all due diligence should be taken to make sure the sale is in the interest of the residents before anything is done on it. Because it seems like this is moving very quickly for whatever reason. I could be cynical about why I personally think it is. I think it's for political reasons, but I think we as the local governing body, as Mr. Ewald said, right, have the voice, the ability to voice our opinion as a group, and I would suggest that we might consider sending such a communication to Delcor. Anybody else have an opinion on that?
I agree.
Anybody else?
And the Stormwater Collaborative meets next week. I mean, I can ask something about it, but
Well, they wouldn't have
they
anything
don't
to do
have any,
with it.
but
They have
so-
jurisdiction over sanitary.
No, but people there may, if there's anything interesting that comes up, we'll let you know.
Okay, and I do have a suggestion in light of recent events that happened over the weekend in Ohio and Texas. It might be a good idea if the council and the police department could try to set up a gun buyback program. Maybe if there's any resident in Morton who has these assault weapons, maybe they could be persuaded to turn them in. Now that's a suggestion, but also too, in light of what's been going on recently, I did come across this quote by a one-time member of the U.S. Senate from Vermont named George Aiken. I believe this is Senator Aiken served from 1939 to 1975. This is a very interesting quote. If we were to wake up some morning and find that everyone was the same race, creed, and color, we would find some other causes for prejudice by noon. And that's the way it is. I mean, I know there are people out there that want everybody to get along, but the only way that's going to happen is either the good Lord is going to have to come down and smack us all over the head with a piece of 2x4, as the old saying goes, or we're going to wipe ourselves off the earth. Those are the only two ways. Leave it up to people. It's just not going to happen. I regret saying that, but it's just something that never has been and never will be. Everybody getting along. And unless anybody else has a question for me, I'll conclude by saying good night. Thank you for listening, and may God bless all of you.
All right, thank you. So since we don't have some of our members here, Mrs. Preston, can we put on, I guess under old business at that point, discussing sending a letter to Delcor about the sale? And we'll let our other members weigh in.
I had one more comment about Bridge Street too. Is because of the train people too, they really fly up that street. Like, I don't know, like slow bumps or thing, they just race, like it's a kind of a cut through with the circle around or from, you know, leaving and stuff. I've unloaded different times and they don't slow down even while you're, you know, it's not like a little slide street, but it's like a little racetrack all the way up there. I mean, I'm sure you guys seen it, but I worry about, you know, there's not as many young kids like running back and forth, but in the front, it's dangerous.
Well, I think it's because of the times that we live in. I see it day in and day out. I mean, people are just always in a hurry trying to get to where they're going to, certain times of the day that they're doing this. So, and it's just, to me, it's just something that happens day in and day out, not just in our community, but in other communities. Even as I travel through other communities, because I often say, just because I live in my community, other people have to come to your community to get to where they're going at. So we just have to be mindful of one another as we travel.
Right.
But no matter where you go on the roadways anymore, there's more vehicles. Each household has more than one vehicle now. So, I mean, it's just the times that we're living in. Just trying to get people to be mindful. I mean, even to the traffic, for as it says 25 miles per hour. People are always exceeding that, so.
Especially with summer coming and kids playing and bikes and not paying
Right.
attention, warm. And even, you know, back in, off of School Street where my mom lived and the kids and everything flying
Yeah.
around.
So we have more traffic now than we used to have.
No, it's been a very long-standing problem. We deal with it, you know, on a case-by-case basis. Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes. Rosina Lloyd, 406 School Street. I'm coming to inquire for some help. As you know, we went through that week of that tremendous storm, and my tree in the front yard fell in 2 different sections. So around 5:30, the day of the storm, it fell, and the highway patrol people came out because it was literally in the street and in our driveway to cut back as much as they could. So still through traffic could come through, and then later 12:30 that following morning, I know everybody had to feel that, the rest of the tree fall, and also fell on the power lines, which caused everybody across the way from me to lose power. And it was, I just called a Big Bertha. She just came down. But I'm only one person. My husband's wrist is dislocated. It's been this way. We don't know how long, so he's been going through therapy and things like that. He did get out there and try to help, as well as my younger children trying to help him get it cleaned up. I've seen some of the council members have come by just to see how we were doing, period. And due to it not hitting specifically a home or something like that, our insurance company said, hey, it's on you. But there's still so much in the street. A neighbor did come by graciously to help with, us getting as much as we could, but there's still the whole front of my property that has a tree, and a lot of it, when ASFA came by to get the tree off of the lines, they had to just push it up, but they couldn't get it into, our yard. But is there a way the highway patrolman can come out and at least help us some more to at least push it onto the property, because it's still in the street? So it's hard trying to get out of the driveway or turn, however we have to do, and then, I'm just asking, is there a way?
Did the insurance company just say they wouldn't pay for it for whatever reason that?
They said it would have been better if it had hit somebody's property.
But even with the cleanup or anything, did they say anything
It
about
was
if you
gonna
called,
be a
if you called a public adjuster, an outside
When we called, they
adjuster?
said it would be about a $1,500 deductible, and they would only give us $500. And I'm like,
Okay.
so I'm like, it's a win-lose situation, but because they came out the first time to help, I'm just asking because it's literally in the street, and a lot of people still they would park their cars in front of our house. There's no tree anymore, so there's also parking issues on that block as well, because people that would normally park to go into their family or go wherever they need to go, there's nowhere to literally park. So they're parking on Broad Street where it says where there's a no parking sign, and they're at risk of getting a ticket. So I'm not just looking out for myself, I'm looking out for my fellow neighbors who sometimes might have a family member stopped by and there's nowhere to park, because we don't have a problem with people parking in front of our property. We just, you know, we're thinking about the community as well. Yeah, because even if my neighbor comes out of their driveway, there's a risk of them hitting a part of the tree, even though it's coned off, it's zoned off, whatever you wanna call it, you know.
What is our general policy for materials that are
Clear the
in the
road,
street?
so that traffic can go by in both directions. I mean, that's
And it's not, cause it's a two-way, and that other side that would come up, they have to
But I
wait
mean,
for somebody to come in.
Just let you know, we understand it, but
Yeah.
even if it's pushed, you still have to get rid of it. I mean, the idea is it just can't sit there.
Well, we've been trying, and I'm.
No, but I mean, that's what it is. I mean, no matter, even if someone else pushes it back, it still has to be removed. I mean,
Yeah, well, we're trying to remove it. I mean, we're trying to remove it. I put it up on Nextdoor, I put it on different sites, me and my husband had. And, you know, a lot of people will go for firewood for like close to 400 for a cord. It's out there, it's a maple, come get it, and nobody's biting. So I'm still stuck with,
But that's what I mean. I think even to have to move it, it would have to be a larger company coming out to do that.
well, there's smaller pieces. It was so huge.
But
I
I
just
mean,
need
the-
help with just getting some of the smaller or whatever. I just need help.
But that's what I'm saying, is that's
Yeah.
what, even from what I've seen out there, that we can't even handle that. That's what, because usually they'll try and get everything, at least whatever, off onto your property. Boom, just out, whatever they can do, and then the rest just has to be left until someone can come along who has the expertise and the equipment to do it, you know?
So it's gonna have to be done by a contractor.
Not even a smaller part of it, like there's smaller sections of it. Not that big piece that you
Well, we
see.
have no place to dump it either, hon.
No, I'm not worried
So to
about you
speak.
dumping it. I don't want you to dump it. I just, you know, I just need the help with it because it's gonna potentially cause a fire hazard. You know, the rain luckily, you know, swelled some of it up, but I'm saying later, like something has to give. Like it is a lot and I can't really do too much with 5 little children running around and a husband who has a broke voice who's out there struggling to get it done.
Have you contacted anybody from the state, like the state representative from this area? Because sometimes they have connections where somebody might be able to help you, even if it's, I want to say, you know, ultimately it gets to a contractor who would be able to do that for you. But a lot of times they have connections that would get you at least maybe the aid that you need to do that. Because we don't have those connections built in. But a lot of times they can find that for you.
Okay.
So I would reach out to Representative O'Mara's office and let her know where you stand,
Okay.
that you try, because like I said, the best they can do is get you that help. The least they can do is point you in the right direction and maybe get you going in that, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Anyone else for open discussion? All right, seeing no one at this time, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Meeting adjourned. Thanks.